All right, we are live. So give it a couple minutes here, let people join in. If you're watching on Facebook, watching on YouTube, throw a comment up there just so we know that it's working. And we'll wait for some people to join here and we'll go from there. How's your day going so far, Reed?
My day is going great. Had fun time teaching earlier today, and again now I'm live and in person on this one as well. So it's an enjoyable time to be talking in front of people.
Hearing
Uh,
your own voice, right? Can never get enough of it.
exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, so we talk a lot about business finances, right? It's literally our job. And we thought that today would be kind of a cool idea to talk a little bit about personal finances because it's something that's, often not really talked a lot that much. Reed and I were kind of discussing some things earlier is we see a lot of people that run their business really well. And then on the personal side of things, they just are a completely different story. And you might think that, Reed and myself know what you're doing personally, but a lot of times personally, we don't see that stuff, right? You don't have a profit and loss. You don't have a balance sheet. So we get it anecdotally. And some of you guys, I'm friends on Facebook. So I know what you're spending your money on to a little bit when you're posting toys and stuff like that on there. But yeah, just wanted to kind of go into some things that we see, quick tips, pain points. And then obviously, if you guys had any questions or something that come up that you guys are wondering about as well, please pop those in the chat. Be happy to discuss those. But Reed, let's start off with a big one, right? The big one I kind of alluded to here before. And I think that I see a lot of shops that make a lot of money or make, what we say is very good money. And they're very diligent with their business, right? They're very mindful about what kind of debts, how long they finance stuff, looking for the best interest rates, making sure that they're preserving their cash. And then on the personal level, it's completely different, right? Business has got a ton of cash. Personally, they're over leveraged. They got way too much debt. And I think that that's probably the hardest thing for a lot of people that are self-employed is, maybe spending too much or not having enough reserves, which then in turn can put some real strain on the business.
Right. They kind of commingle their monies in a lot of ways. They think that the shop money is their money, and they tend to want to spend more money that way sometimes, as well as getting careless and thinking that because I'm so successful and I have all this money coming in, I could keep buying things personally. But all of a sudden, sometimes the well dries up a little bit at the shop, and your demands at home become too great. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can see that as well.
I mean, how many times I know personally I've had this call a couple of times of people call me up and saying, Hunt, where's all my money? Right? You guys say that I've made all this money. Where is it? I don't have any of it. And they've made money. I think the one that you and I were working on, the guy made $300,000 or so, and he had $3,000 in his business bank account because every single penny and more he had stripped out of his business.
Right. Yeah, and they just don't realize it because they're using the company credit card and they're paying off the company credit card. It's not a business expense, but personal, and it's going out in draws, and they don't realize how much money they're taking out personally. What I'd probably tell a shop owner and anybody personally is start using Quicken or QuickBooks for your own personal finances, so that way you can track how much money you spend. And you might start seeing the hole that you have and saying, my gosh, I go out to eat and I spend $20,000 on eating out. I mean, for some people, that's okay, not a problem. For others, that's just a lot of money that maybe, you know what, we might have to do a little bit of a change of habit there. So,
Yeah, I mean, one of the great points that you had here, you had a couple really good ones there, Reed, but one of the ones was talking about tracking it, right? You can get QuickBooks. You can use QuickBooks personally as well, right? It just tracks your bank accounts and credit cards. Some of the reporting would not be applicable, but it could allow you to track all of your expenses, which is really helpful. Now, QuickBooks has something called Quicken, which is QuickBooks just focused on personal finance. And then they have a new one that they're trying to push too called Mint, which is very similar, but it's web-based. It's an app. I've used it in the past. It's pretty good, and so we'll track what you're spending. But what people don't realize is in the personal life, a lot of people aren't spending a ton of money, right? It's not like they're saying, hey, I'm going to go buy this for 10,000. I'm going to go buy this for 5,000. It's usually a lot of very small things.
right.
If you're looking down through there and you're like, hey, how the heck did I spend $5,000 on eating out last month? And you're going to say you didn't go to 2 restaurants to spend $2,500, but you went out 100 times and spent $500, $50, or whatever it was. And so a lot of this stuff adds up. And unless you're kind of looking at it on a more macro level, you probably don't even know how much you're spending here. One of the other things here that I wanted to talk about too is a lot of people have been given a gift here, right? In these last 2 years, we had EIDL money, we had PPP money. How many shops have you seen that are living high on the hog, not because their business has made a ton of money, but they've got a lot of these government program monies?
Yeah. A lot of them are keeping some of it in reserve, but some of them have burned through all that money and all of a sudden it's gone. And now you're going to have to start making the payback on the idle loan. You still got a little bit of a mulligan on that, but you still going to have to make the payment. You got to be able to have that cash flow to do that. And if you got used to having all that cash and spending it personally, you're going to have a rude awakening when it isn't there anymore for yourself.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And one of the things too here, we're talking to self-employed people. We're talking to small business owners, not someone, well, there might be some people that are employed by other people. I see Tracy commenting on here. Hey, Tracy. But one of the things that's a little bit different for people that are self-employed is the highs are higher, the lows are lower, right? If you go and you have a good job and you make $200,000 a year, you're going to make $200,000. You divide that by 12, and you're going to get that money like clockwork. It's very easy to budget your money. It's very easy to figure out how much money you can spend or how much money you need to save. However, if you're self-employed, you might still make that same $200,000, but you have a month where you made no money or maybe even lost money, followed by a month where you made $30,000. You need to look at these swings and say, hey, can my personal life take these swings? I mean, how many times have we seen people that are very consistent on this, and then all of a sudden they have a down year and they're in big trouble?
So true, so true. And the other problem we got is sometimes the husband or the wife doesn't know what the other is spending. So you got another dynamic there is there's multiple people dipping into the cookie jar along the way. So it might be a good idea to start tracking it to again, help each of you have that conversation to say, hey, we need to work together on this rather than blaming one or the other. So you need to maybe start tracking that to keep an eye on it. The other thing, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you are talking about this stuff, do you think that this is something that you're having a conversation with just the shop owner, or this needs to be something with their spouse as well?
I think this should be a conversation with both people and get them involved in it because, again, the business owner, sometimes it's the man that does the books, sometimes it's the wife that does the books, and the money is flowing out of there and no one knows really where it's going along the way. So I think it's important that you guys do it as a couple or a family and make sure that the money is being spent. And even a little bit of a family, having the kids understand, we can't go ahead and give you guys everything that you want. As parents, I'm guilty of trying to provide more for my kids because I didn't have as much as a parent, from my mom. So I try to give my kids more, but I had to learn to say, hey, we can't do as much. The trips can't be as extravagant. I got to bootstrap a little bit as well. So.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point there, Reed, because if you're not having these conversations, then your spouse, if they're not involved in business, might not know if this is good spending or bad spending. And a lot of times people don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation with their spouse, their partner, their kids. It's just taboo, right? Oh, I don't want to go back and tell Reed, you know what, I can't afford this. We just can't be doing that, But unfortunately, you have to have these uncomfortable conversations sometimes because while it might be short-term uncomfortable, the long-term benefit is going to pay dividends. You got to be on the same page here because, Reed and I are married. I spend as much as I want and Reed saves a bunch. At the end of the day, if I'm spending too much money, no matter how much Reed saves, it's never going to be enough. Right. And most relationships have a yin and a yang, but unless there's a communication, unless there's a dialogue there, then it's really going to be, a bit tricky. So we got a bunch of people saying hi. Real quick, Reed, I had a very important question I got to answer here for Darren. Do I have to track my money for skiing? Is that something we can overlook? Never track your money on skiing, Darren. That is one thing out there. There's no such thing as spending too much money. So you are completely fine there.
That as well as fishing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yes. One of the things, though, that you and I both talk to our clients about, Hunt, is having a business savings account, making sure they reserve some cash for them for the shop along the way. Is there any guidelines you think that we should look at on the personal end? People should look at having.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, just like the business, within reason, there's no such thing as too much money, right? And that's a champagne problem to have, to look at this and be like, Reed, you have too much money in your business bank account. But the big thing here is to have, usually for a business, I say 3 to 6 months operating expenses. Do you think that that's pretty similar for a personal, or?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair on the personal side, especially when you have a double income family. Definitely should be something there. For myself, what I started out with is I started with a number. I wanted to put away $10,000. It was irregardless of how much money I was making. Once I got up to 10,000, I was excited. So the next goal was 25,000. I got up to $25,000. Then I set the goal of $50,000, and it started getting closer to 50. And then once I got it, I felt really good of having that cash there. And by the way, it's always been there. The once I got it there, I never found a way to lose that. It was, to me, was making sure I have enough nest egg for myself. So you might want to set a goal of an actual dollar worth versus 3 or 6 months, but come up with something along the way.
Yeah, and a big thing there too is, don't get caught up with what other people are doing. Worry about yourself, right? If you are sitting here right now and you're, kind of sheepishly admitting that you don't have as much as you want in savings, don't try to all of a sudden say, you know what, now I'm going to have $100,000. Hey, you got $5,000 now. Take Reed's advice. Hey, you know what? Our next goal is I want to put 10,000 in there. All right, how long do I want to do that? Next 6 months. All right, I'm going to do $100 a week, right? We preach this stuff all the time for business, but these same lessons can be taught personally. Hey, you having trouble saving? All right, automatically transfer $25 a month from your personal checking to your savings account, right? It's going to do it automatically. You're not even going to think anything of it. Hey, still doing okay? Bump it up to 50, bump it up to 100. Just start saving money in there. I mean, if you have anything in your savings, you're ahead of most Americans. I mean, I think I saw, something the other day, 80% of Americans, have less than $2,000 or something in savings, or someone can correct me on that quote, but I remember looking at it and being like, that's wild, because just like a business, if unexpected expense comes up personally and you're a small business, you have two choices. You can either go get a loan, a credit card or something, you're going to be paying a bunch of interest, or what's your other choice? Go back to the well and pull it out of your business.
Right.
Now, what if you then pull so much money out of your business that you've now negatively affected your business, which is just going to compound the issue and make it even worse? I mean, unfortunately, we've seen this, we don't see a whole lot of people go out of business, fortunately, right? But a couple people that we have that have went out of business, about half of them had issues. About half of them were really their own biggest enemy and just killed the business by spending too much money personally.
Well, without a doubt, the biggest stress of running a business is cash. So again, if we manage our cash in our business and manage our cash at home, we're eliminating the largest stretch that we usually have in life, which is cash. So speaking of cash, my vote is also have a little bit of cash at home too, because you just never know what might come up. I had a client of mine try to go to the bank to get cash to pay for a car with cash, and the bank says we don't have the cash for it. It was $7,000. It's crazy. And the fact nowadays you got to pay money to deposit cash into the bank. That's also more insane. But you might want to have a little cash around the house as well. I had a friend of mine, Bruce, who always told me, have cash, because whenever these people come working at your neighbor's house, you could get them to come over and pay them cash, and they'll do stuff for you at your house too. So, hey, cash does amazing things.
No, it's a really good point too. And like you said, our society is really trying to outlaw cash as much as they can. I've had the same situation where I go to the bank and ask for cash, and not like I'm getting tons of money out of here. And they say, well, did you call ahead? Like, what? You're a bank. What I'd be calling ahead to say, where's my money? But realistically, the branch that I go to, which is not a very small branch, they say at any given point, they probably have less than $10,000 total in there. So you think about robbing a bank, change your mind, because it doesn't seem to be the best industry anymore. It's not, the risk versus reward is not great. Got a couple of questions here, Reed. So I'm going to do rapid fire and I'm going to ask you this.
Okay.
So Heather was asking how much should stay in the business before transferring to personal trust for asset protection here.
Uh,
So let's say that you're a shop, Reed, and you're doing $1 million a year. How much would you say is too much in that business?
I would probably say I'd want at least somewhere between 75 and $150,000 liquid cash along the way. So anything over 150, I'd be starting to consider we could move it out of the shop account and move it to a personal, assuming they're a sole proprietor, partnership, or an S corporation. If
Yeah.
you're C corporation, you might have to leave that in there because it'll be deemed as a dividend taking it out.
And Heather actually has a really good question here. This is actually deeper than it looks. And so, can you elaborate on what she's talking about for asset protection of why it actually can be a bit of a liability if you were to accumulate $1 million in your business?
Well, if you had $1 million in your business and for some reason I end up suing your business, that is an asset that I would be going after to try to put in my pocket and take it out of your pocket. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that because remember, if you are a corporation or an LLC, you're giving your legal protection to separate your personal stuff from your business. So once the cash comes out, it's now personal, not business. So a good way to protect it there.
Yeah, exactly right. And so everyone says you have legal protection here, but anything that's in the business is fair game. If your technician fails to put on lug nuts, someone drives the road, God forbid they get hurt, you have $1 million in your checking account, you're going to bet your life that they are not going to settle for anything less than that because they know that they could easily take that stuff. And so it's not a very common problem to have, but more and more we're seeing this stuff. There's no reason to build up that kind of reserves in your business. And one big thing out there, depending, no matter what your size is, my general rule of thumb is I don't want to strip my business so down on cash that I ever have to put money back in. If I take a distribution, if I take a draw on my business, I want my business to be healthy enough that it's going to be able to operate normally. And even if there's a downturn, have enough money in there that I don't have to turn around and put money back in.
I would agree.
All right. Another question for you, Reed. Matt, thanks for joining us today, Matt. 3 to 6 month operating expenses. How does one define operating expenses for this? Is this money should be sitting in a separate account? Where is the best place to store this reserves? So a couple of things on there, Reed. So he's talking about when you mentioned personal operating expenses. So when you're talking about 3 to 6 months of personal operating expenses, what do you mean by that?
That would be your mortgage, your food, groceries, car insurance, anything that you would spend personally for your own personal needs, even your entertainment that you would have. Again, you'd want to have that in reserve because, again, even if life gets bad, you still want to be able to have a little bit of fun along the way. So I would start with anything that you spend money, cable bill, phone bill, etc.
So here's a good exercise so you can figure out what your operating expenses are. So the easiest one, if you have a fairly simple, kind of personal finances, take a look at your bank statement for last month and look at total inflows and total outflows. Total outflows, that's your monthly operating expenses. Most people, it's not that simple. You got a couple accounts, you got credit cards and stuff like that. Other way, and this is again a great exercise, for the next 30 days, track every single dollar and cent that comes in and out of your bank account. You're going to be surprised because there's going to be stuff in there where you're going to go, did not even know that I was still paying these people, right? And that's another way that you can get it. But essentially, Matt, just look at this like your business, right? Personal business, we're tracking whatever that business needs on a monthly basis to be able to spend. Now, Reed, do you think you should have that in a separate account? Is that necessary? Is that a good idea or what?
I like to think about having that in the savings account and have it in a reserve. Again, it still needs to be liquid. So I'm not turning around and taking and buying stocks or anything like that. It's liquid cash. Again, easy to get to, transfer over to the main personal checking account. Again, the idea is just having it as reserves for yourself. Again, if you could get to a point where you got it up to 3 months and 6 months and you start going more, then you can take a portion of that and invest it, make you money at that point in time.
Gotcha. And, on that one, where's the best place for this to sit? Everything right now, if you want this to be somewhat liquid, is paying pretty terrible interest, right? You could do a savings account. You could do a money market account. You're getting 1% on a good day. If you had the excess reserves, right, this is something that you could lock away. You could do CDs, right? Those are starting to, creep up in interest rates and stuff like that. And then ultimately you have someone like the stock market. But again, we don't want to be touching our reserves and something like that. Our reserves, we can't afford to lose. We can stand to gain a little bit, but we can't have that downside. So I'm going to be a lot more careful with that.
I agree.
Cool. Let's get into a really depressing topic here next. Let's talk about what happens when someone dies, right? And so, it's something that no one likes to talk about, but big things on here are life insurance, right? I mean, Reed, do you think everyone should have life insurance?
I think you need to have life insurance to take care of large obligations. Large obligations, possibly paying the house off, large obligation, maybe making sure that there's enough cash for the other person to have money for retirement, large money there to take care of taking care of the kid. Hunt is a great example. He should have a life insurance policy, possibly on his beautiful wife, because if she's not there, who's going to take care of the kids? All right, so he needs to be able to, be able to afford to pay somebody to take care of the three beautiful girls that he has. All right, and by the way, once that goes past, like for example, both of my kids are in college or out, I'm not having to worry about a caretaker. Okay, now I was thinking about more having enough money to help for college education. So that was my life insurance shifted along the way. So in a perfect world, eventually at some time in your life, you should need a life insurance, in my eyes, because you've already covered the big obligations along the way.
So that was a really cool idea to think about here, Reed, because just like a lot of things that we talk about, this is not something that you can do once and you're done, right? My needs for life insurance for me and my family are going to be different than your needs for your family, going to be different for pretty much everyone here listening, right? I'm pretty young. I got 3 kids. I still have a mortgage on my house. And so that's going to be a completely different picture than Reed, who's got a paid off house, doesn't owe anyone anything. And his kids are, almost all out on their own right now, And so what you need to look at is you need to, unfortunately, look at, hey, if I goes away, what happens to my business? What happens to my income? I need enough money for my family to, at least keep up some sort of lifestyle and as much as you want. Hey, you could get a $10 million life insurance policy and they could be living high on the hog after you pass. It's going to cost you some money. And again, we got to talk about it. If you make that life insurance too much, your spouse might have a vested interest in seeing you die here too. So you got to be a little bit careful. Hopefully Kayla's not listening to this. So yeah. Really good point on that, Reed. Now, Heather, we'll get to your question one bit. I want to, kind of segue to this one. We see this a lot. I mean, we have a lot of our clients, a couple of them on here, that are in a family business, meaning, both of the couple is working in the business and have a really good grasp on what is needed in the business and have a succession plan there. Hey, if one of them, something were to happen, not only do they have life insurance, but also would know how to continue on with the business. What advice would you give to someone if I'm sitting here right now, I'm a shop owner, my wife has nothing to do with the business, doesn't understand anything, but wants to kind of know a little bit about the business? What would you say to that person?
I think you would need to start talking to them about getting involved, looking at the finances, maybe getting involved in coming into the shop to get to know the team members of the shop. Probably starting to groom a team member in the shop that, heaven forbid, if something happens to me. Recently, this past year, we had a shop owner get cancer, pass away. Fortunate side there is the service advisor was able to take the lead and keep running the business. The owner, the wife became the owner of the business, and it's still thriving successfully along the way because they had a vision along the way and some communications on what would happen if something went wrong. And unfortunately, something did go wrong. So.
Yeah. And how many times, I mean, I would say that is the minority, not the majority. I mean, how many times have we seen, again, it's terrible that this happens, but we've had a couple situations where, the shop owner passed away and everyone was left just kind of in limbo. Right. And the thing that you got to think about here is if you're thinking about this, don't just think about your family, right? Think about all of your employees and then all of the employees that have families as well. They're depending on your business to have a job to be successful. You not only owe it to your own family, you owe it to your employees that have taken care of you for so long to make sure that there's some sort of continuity. are Reed and I telling you have to have your spouse involved? They have to be there every single day? No, but they need to at least know where the skeletons are buried, know where, the general idea of what it takes to run a business. And then also have another option there too of like, hey, my wife might not know how to run my business, but I have this second guy that between the two of them, they should be able to pick up the pieces and kind of have some sort of, segue here to something that's not as catastrophic as it could be.
One of the things you kind of led into with that one is you need to have somebody else that could sign checks. Because if you don't have somebody else that can sign checks, you're going to have a lot of problems if that lead person is, again, not even dead, but maybe hospitalized. I had a client of mine, they stepped off a curb and got hit by a motorcycle and they were hospitalized, and somebody still had to be able to write checks and process payroll and things like that. So you need to make sure that's there. A place that it's written down all of your centers of influence. Place with the lawyer's phone number, a place with the banker's phone number, the financial advisor's phone number, the accountant's phone number. That way, whomever has to pick up the pieces has someone to go to and start asking questions along the way.
Really, really good idea. Yeah, I mean, I think that, as we're talking about this, there's a reoccurring theme here. Everyone likes to plan and everyone likes to talk about when things are good. No one likes to plan for when things go south because you don't want to think about it, right? Hey, I'm never going to die. Unfortunately, everyone here, we're all dying. It's just a matter of how long it's going to be. And we need to plan for it. We need to set money aside. Same thing with our cash reserves. Hey, everything is good. We don't have to worry about saving because we're making money so fast. A lot of people are one or two technicians away from having the worst year of their life, right? We're riding a razor's edge here. So we need to make sure that we're, protecting ourselves for the good times and the bad times as well. All right. Heather, I'm going to give you an award for all these questions here. These are good ones. How much will you want to have these days in retirement by age 65? Reed, so if you're sitting here right now, let's say our average person is 50 years old, how would they know how much they need to retire?
That's a great question. I did a little bit of research on that, ironically, and I actually was prepared for this question. You need somewhere between 65 and 75% of your current income to support the cash along the way. And that cash could be coming from Social Security, okay, when you hit 67, full Social Security, rent maybe from the building of the shop, retirement accounts, and any other reserves that you have. Hopefully by the time you're 65, Heather, we're not having to deal with the kids and taking care of the kids. If not, you got a larger burden along the way if you still have them under the roof as well. So somewhere between cash flow of 65 to 75% of your current income.
So Heather, another one here too is, anyone that's wondering that question, sit down with a financial advisor, right? It's very, very hard to give these rough numbers because it depends on what you owe, how much you make now, what you want your retirement life to look like, how far you've already started saving on this. And then the hardest one about all of this, how long are you going to live for, right? If, everyone in your family died when they're 57 and you're now 65, let's be honest, you're on borrowed time here, right? And hopefully you're taking better care of yourself than the rest of your family did. But a lot of times I'll kind of talk to clients about this because there's some topics that need to be discussed. And I'll say, well, how, old are your parents? My parents are still alive. My uncle is 103. And it's like, you're in this for the long haul, right? You have to be a lot more careful about this. And you really have to set yourself up because if you have $1 million saved at 65, if you live till 70, you can have a very extravagant life, right? If you lived 105, I mean, money's the least of your problems at that point, but that's 40 years that you need to support yourself. So talk to a financial advisor. And what were you going to say there, Reed?
Oh, no, I was going to say, if you end up living longer and you only have the $1 million set aside, all of a sudden at 90-year-old, you're going to be a Walmart greeter, okay? Because you'll run out of money. So you want to make sure you're prepared for, you could live to 100 in many cases.
Or have more kids. One of them is bound to be, wealthy enough where they can support you, right? That's what you have kids for. You take care of them now and they're going to take care of you later.
You saw that one commercial recently where they have 3 kids playing in the yard and the one ends up throwing a rock at a beehive. It's hilarious. Saying, I think we need to have a 4th child.
I'm just thinking now, I was like, you know what? I got 3 kids. 2 of them I think would take care of me. The one I think would probably say, Hunt, Dad, go get a job at Walmart. You'd be all right. Bill's character. All right, cool. Heather, another really good question here. Succession planning. What is involved? Parent passes, become ill, asset, bank accounts. How does this transfer over and who would set this up? This is a lawyer thing. A lot of this stuff has to be put in place. One of the big things that Reed talked about was, if you die or become ill, who can sign on your behalf? And you would need a power of attorney set up. You would need someone that can execute this for you and really think through all of the weird situations. What a lot of times, these estate attorneys are really good at doing to making sure that all these boxes are checked. Reed, anything else to add on that one?
There's actually 3 items that you should probably consider having. You should have a will.
Mm-hmm.
You should strongly consider having an advanced medical directive, and then you should have a power of attorney. Those are again, this has nothing to do with the business. This is every person should strongly consider those items.
Repeat those again, Reed, because I think these are really important and we went through this fast. So we need a will.
A will. That way you're directing things to happen the way you want to versus somebody else coming in and deciding that it's going to go this way instead of that way.
Yep.
Second, you should have an advanced medical directive. An advanced medical directive basically spells out that if I'm on life support, pull the plug on me or not pull the plug on me. Okay, that thing. And the last is having a power of attorney. So that way, when I'm on life support, somebody has the ability to act on my behalf.
Yeah. And again, it's really kind of morbid to think about, but these are conversations that I've seen firsthand, and it makes it a lot easier when someone's already made that decision for the family, right? If you're making them make this decision for you, it's really a disservice to them, and it can cause a lot of strife on it. But you want this to be spelled out as clearly as you possibly can. Hey, if I pass, everything goes to them, or it gets split pro-ratedly. There's not infighting, or we're going to minimize the infighting here. But yeah, awesome points. Talk to a lawyer about that, and this is probably not something that you're going to be able to go sit down one time and get everything taken care of, right? This is going to be steps. Hey, first things first, let's get a will taken care of. If something happens to me, where does this go? If something happens to me and my spouse, where does this go? Biggest thing on this one, and this is going to be related to shops, and we're going to open this up for any final questions or comments. Biggest thing that I've seen is if you have kids and the plan is for you to pass the business down to your kids, if you own the real estate as well, have that be going to the same people. The worst thing that you can do is, let's say that you have 2 boys. You give one of them the shop, you give other one the real estate. Now the one son is renting from the other brother that's landlord. It's a recipe for disaster. One starts doing, well, hey, you need to lower my rent because I can't afford this, or vice versa. If you're going to have someone that's going to be involved in the business, have them be involved in all aspects of it. Give your other kid that's not involved in the business, give them your personal house, give them your personal savings account, right? Don't try and get them mixed up to it, because it might work okay for a little bit, but I've seen firsthand where that can go really ugly and really bad.
You said that very well. I completely agree with you on that. Again, the one that's going to own the business, let them own the dirt. And Hunt and I would both say at this point in time, let them inherit the dirt upon your demise, because the tax laws are even better at this point in time for that. So.
Yeah, so right now, let's do real quick into that, and we'll kind of wrap up any final questions and final comments on this. So what Reed's talking about there is, let's say that Reed inherited a building from his dad, and he's had it. Dad paid $50,000 for it. And so if Reed's dad passes right now, Dad paid $50,000 for that, but that building is now worth $1 million. Now Reed has $1 million of basis in that, meaning that you get what's called stepped up basis. It's not what Dad paid for it. It's what it was worth when he passed. And that can be really huge, because if you say, let's say that right before Dad passed, he said, Reed, I want you to have the building. You're now going to have it for $50,000, not $1 million. And so if Reed turns around and sells that for the next day for $1 million, he has $950,000 worth of gain. However, if Reed's dad passes and then Reed gets a building, he now has $1 million of basis in it. He gets that step up. If he sells it the next day for $1 million, no taxable event. So can be a strategy for succession planning to maybe not get those assets until you die, especially if there's a lot of appreciation.
Awesome.
One more question here, and then we'll kind of do final wrap-up questions and comments on this. Should the real estate be owned in a separate LLC rather than the business owning it, especially if future rent would be part of my retirement?
Definitely would want to have the building outside the business, but if it already is inside the business, then what you probably want to do is create a new entity that's going to buy the business, and you're going to retain the real estate in the old business, for lack of better words. So that would probably be the only way to do it, because if it's already in the business, it's going to be a taxable event trying to pull it out of there, in a very taxable event at the least. So
yeah, so the big thing on there is if you have your real estate owned in your operating entity, the only easy way, well, it's not easy, it's still hard too. The only way to get that building out until another LLC would be to sell it to yourself. And if you sell it to yourself, you have to do it at fair market value, which means that you're paying transfer taxes on it, you're paying recordation fees with the city and state, and then you're also paying income tax on any appreciation. So in a perfect world, yes, it's in separate entities. If it's already in one, it can get pretty tricky. Cool. So Reed, I mean, I think my biggest takeaway on this would be, hey, make sure that you're prepared for if something goes wrong, right? Whether that's a downturn in business, whether that is, losing a family member, whether that is, someone becoming severely ill. I want to make sure that I have the cash. I want to make sure that I have the documentation. I want to make sure that I have the plan if things go right or things go wrong. I mean, what do you think that your number one or a couple quick hits would be action items if you're listening to this right now?
My first action item would be is making sure I have my financial house in order, knowing how much money I'm spending in places. Again, because when you spend too much money at home, you usually put a strain on the business. Hunt and I, we look at balance sheets of the businesses and we worry about the cash position. We never see your personal. And unfortunately, if you're drawing all the cash out of the business, we definitely start trying to yell at you. But if it's a balance and you're spending too much at home and going too far in debt, that would be my biggest concern, is maybe doing a balance sheet for yourself at home.
Cool. Yeah. No, guys, I mean, the big thing here, run your personal life like you run your business, right? And if you do that, you're going to do just fine. I've seen a lot of you guys run very good shops. And if you can run your personal finances half as good as you look at and care about your business finances, you end up making more money in the long run. So I think that's all I got for today. Read anything else? We're good to go.
We're good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Hope it was insightful, and we will talk to you soon.